my next guest, and to be honest with you, I don't know where to start. For he's an artist, he's a writer, he's an author, he's a broadcaster, he's a musician. I could go on, and I'm not going to go on because we'll get to speak hopefully about all them things and so much more. It's with great pleasure that I welcome George Fitzgerald to make the difference. George, you're very welcome, and thanks very much for joining me. George, just before we start, I'm just conscious the pandemic, COVID. I hope you and all your family got through it okay.
Yeah, we all got through it fine, thank God, you know what I mean?
And that's good to hear, George. I'm glad to hear that. And you're looking well. And obviously the viewers can't see it, but I can see it, and you're looking well, and it's great to see you. George has shown me his muscles there. He's looking very toned, and I wouldn't be surprised now in the middle of the interview he didn't get down and do a few press-ups. But if he does, I'll let you know. George, as always, I love speaking to you, I love interviewing you, I love being interviewed by you. So, George, just in terms of since we last spoke, it's a while since we last spoke. You're writing away. We can talk. Maybe we start with the writing and the books and the publishing and all that. How is the writing going for you? Did you get to stay writing during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things going. There's a lot of things going on during the pandemic in Jordan. And the main problem with the pandemic was going back. In order to go forward, we go back. The problem was that 2017, as you know, we released The Secret Life of Ashley Brown. And then 2020 came out, The Promise Maker. And then before we knew where we were in a pandemic. And then the problem was then bookshops and sales and getting books in the shops and distribution. And then eventually everything was closing down. So you're left in a conundrum. And then very recently I did an interview on another radio station. And it's over in the north side shopping centre. And I went there with a specific purpose was to go to a bookshop over there called Book Value. And I found, to me dismay, that the bookshop was closed down. It was gone. So really over the last, say, the pandemic and all that, there's an awful lot of dealing with that type of thing. But however, in saying that, in the own leisure time, yeah, I've been working on different stories, writing different books. I put out a short story there very recently called Molly Gumball. I put it out. Molly Gumball is not the book that I'm working on. I'm working on other books, but I just did that as a sideline. And Molly Gumball is basically a very short story. Now I will continue it, but I'm looking at the whole audio book. So I wrote it in purpose to try and find out. And I found a wonderful robot that tells the tale perfectly the way I want it. And that's where I am. But I'm working with other stuff as well.
Oh, well, George, we wish you every success with that. And we might come back to that because you're talking about audio. Also, you're a documentary maker. You love recording stuff, George. You have a gift behind the camera. You're gifted in front of the camera, and you're doing both. So you were getting a few documentaries out there as well and capturing a bit of Dublin history and beyond, I suppose, too.
Yeah, I did a documentary. It was a short documentary, basically. It's sort of semi-biographical, if you know what I mean, about really sort of touching off Dublin in the 1960s. What led up to the 1960s, the problems the country were facing, basically economically and everything else. And then the emergence, obviously, of the Ballymoon Towers. Really primarily focusing on that because that's where I emerged from myself, from the Ballymoon Towers, and probably most of Dublin, North Side Dublin did anyway. And that was a big joint adventure. It was the big news of its day, of its time, right throughout Europe, as you know yourself, Michael, of its time. And so I did a little short documentary of that and things like that. I've been working on a few other ideas. I haven't finished them yet. But that's where I am, you know.
And George, thanks, because I had the privilege of being interviewed for that documentary. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to be involved in that. And a powerful documentary it is too. George, you're a great man, and I know, I watch you and I follow your stuff on Facebook. You're a great man for keeping stuff going out there. How do you keep going, George? How do you keep, we talk about being the artist, you're the musician. You've so many things behind you. I know in your younger days you were a boxer and you just have so much going on. Then you were a working man, obviously, and you the whole thing, George, and your religion. We can talk about your religion and your faith and what your faith means to you. How do you keep going, George, with the Facebook and getting the stuff? You're just constantly putting stuff out there. You must have an absolute well of stories.
Everything that comes out on Facebook, primarily, is something I've done today, mate. Basically, so everything is new and fresh. And I think the variety of what I can tap into, whether it's drawing, sketches, paints, writing, documentaries, basically even monologues, interviews, and blah blah. Although it can be an instant sort of gratification, which is I'll go in there and do a drawing now, say do a sketch, do a nice drawing, finish it today, put it up on Facebook, and there you go. So it's instant gratification. But however, in saying that, it's also probably a disciplinarian that's killing discipline. In other words, what I'm saying is, somebody might come around and say, George, say what? Where are you at the moment? And so I'm working on Molly Gumball. I'm working on Molly Gumball this morning. I'm working on a book called Man Makes the Best Coffee. Then after that is Go Home, People Go Home. We Lived in the Sky, a DLF runner story. I'm flicking between all these books and stories and blah, blah. And somebody would probably say to me, you know what the best thing to do there is? Say what? Just focus on one. Just put everything down and focus on this one thing and get this one thing finished. Where I'm just drifting from Jack to Billy. And I think I sort of got this habit really over the pandemic and all that, because there is nowhere open. There was nowhere open. There was really nowhere to go. So it sort of killed the momentum of actually aggressively going towards something in the sense of, and plus it's a very, very difficult game, as you and I yourself, Michael, books.
Yeah, but George, I see it differently, right? Okay, like in terms of yourself, that when you're writing, you're writing. When you're doing your art, you're doing your art.
Yeah.
When you're doing your documentary, you're doing your documentary. When you're doing your social media on Facebook, so I don't see it. It doesn't appear to me, as an outsider looking in, that you're bouncing around.
Yeah, no.
So it's I'm not like undisciplined. You're probably one of the most disciplined people I know, because you do write and you stay writing. You do art and you stay drawing and painting. You do interviews and you stay doing them. So and like I could talk to you today, you could be working on a story. Could talk to you later that day, you've done a picture. And it's not like you're bouncing around, because when you go to it, is it fair to say you give it everything? When in that moment, you're giving it everything. Oh
yeah, you have to give it. I think it also comes from the boxing. I'd say a lot of it has to come from boxing. The boxing, the discipline the boxing brought, the discipline in the boxing taught. See, remember when I say we, I'm referring to my brother Joseph also. The fact is that when we were kids, we were probably no more than 10 years of age when we started boxing. And we were in our 20s, our best part of our 20s, when we finished. So when we were 22, probably, we'd spent half our life in the ring at that point. Right, that was half our life. And see, that was an awful lot of years of discipline. And then we went straight into the music. And what we did with the music was exactly what we did with the band. In other words, when we were kids, we trained Monday, Wednesday and Friday in the club, in Glasnevin Boxing Club. We're from Finglas, but we trained in Glasnevin Boxing Club. And we trained Tuesday and Thursdays at home. Now, when we went straight into the band, into the studio, we went Monday, Wednesday and Friday. So what I'm saying is that everything became, there's a central focus. And particularly with boxing, you've got to be really focused. Because this guy's coming at you, he's not coming at you to give you a birdie card. He's coming at you to knock your head off. So you've got to be really focused on every single minute or moment in that ring. So you learn to be focused, you know what I mean? It becomes part of your life. It becomes part of your attitude towards things in life. Well, for me personally.
And George, when you talk about the band, that was the D11 Runners, well known, not just not just on the north side, but throughout Dublin and throughout Ireland and beyond.
Yeah.
So and we might come back to the music in a moment, if that's okay. In terms then, George, art, writing, and music too, was that always part of your life growing up, or was that something you came to later in life, or was that something that developed over time?
I think also that's an interesting question, because most of everything I do is basically self-taught, right? And practically everything I do is self-taught. There was no basically schooling and any of it really. in that sense. Even musically, saxophones and that. It was all self-taught. But then coming back to the background as well, we came from a sort of a cultured house, because there was always artistic conversations. And even today, there still is. Like, my dad could be talking about Picasso, could be talking about Picasso, we could be talking about James Brown, could be talking about Charles Dickens, you could be talking about basically a variety of different people, Marlon Brando, actors, casting agents, all that. It was always that type of conversation. So it was a very cultured home in that way. So we became very arty, I suppose, in our own thinking. That's possibly a lot of it had to, because I'm very arty in a lot of things. You know that way? Even though you look at...
Yeah, and that creativity is part, because you're always creating. You're always, and anytime I meet you, George, when I have the pleasure to meet you, there's always ideas floating around, and you're bouncing ideas around, and maybe this and maybe that, and there's more than a lifetimes of ideas there. And broadcasting, George, you love interviewing people. You have a great graph for people. You enjoy being with people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I like to find out where, I like to see people, I like to talk to people, because I like to see where their history is, where their background, what motivates them. Every single one of us are completely and utterly different. And every single one of us are completely and utterly see the world differently. Even though we don't think we do. Even though we share a general topic, which is basically your life and whatever life spills out. So in other words, at this moment in time where we find ourselves, the national conversation, the national consciousness at the moment is basically the Queen and her death, right? And the new king, what's going to take place across the water, blah, 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 new prime minister, what's going on over there, and all that. So this is all just basically filtered into the nation's consciousness. It's the general conversation in the nation at the moment. However, everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. You know, someone's going to say this, someone's going to say that. History's going to shout its head, history will shout louder than basically the present. There's all of that conversation's going to go on.
And George, like in terms of them conversations, okay, because you're at the heart and you're talking to people, you're discussing with people, and then you withdraw, if that's a fair word, to go, whether it's to do with the writing or the art or come up with the documentary making or the broadcasting, or like in terms of when you're there, George, does a thought come into your head, or do you say, look, today I'm going to work on a picture, I'm going to do a bit of writing, I'm going to work on a documentary, you know, I'm going to look at doing an interview? Or is that something that you plan, or is that just a thought? You know, thought comes into your head, no, I'm going to do a bit of writing now. Then you're doing a bit of writing and then a bit of art now. Like, so I'm just wondering, how does your day look like that, George? Do you go with the day? Do you let the day come to you, George, or do you go after the day? Or
basically, Michael, it really filters with the whole. I suppose writing is the main part. Right, writing is the central issue. Everything around, everything is either to support it, help it, build it, or structure. But basically, writing is the main crux of it all. Now, in that, well, then that's the first part of call in the morning. When I get up, when my thoughts are with me, when I gather my thoughts, when I battle a lot of demons sometimes, as we all have to do sometimes, then I come down, I settle down, and the waves of the storms of the mind settle. I find that place. And what I find is where I'm motivated at that moment, in so far as I follow where the passion is leading me. If the passion this morning, for example, was to go and try and work on a chapter or develop a chapter or develop the character in Molly Gumball, I'll go with Molly Gumball. Tomorrow morning I might wake up and it might be a different passion there to go and search out a character in the Pitbull story. Ma makes the best coffee, you know, so I'll go with that. And generally everything after that comes sporadically, and it's always an afterthought. Art, music, whatever it is an afterthought. But the writing is the sail on the ship.
Oh, George, that's powerful, and great to hear you say that. And you just mentioned music there, George. Is music still a big part of your life, or is music?
Listen to music, yeah, but other than that, no.
And like in terms of listening, do you listen to music when you're writing, when you're doing your art?
Well, doing the art, writing I don't. I used to do that. I haven't done that in years. What I used to do was I used to put on instrumental music in the background and write with instrumental music. There was all these chill out tapes at the time, and I used to listen to a lot of that type of stuff when I was writing. Now, well, that's all right in your drawing. I don't do that so much when I'm writing now. I might get back into actually. I don't do it as much when I'm writing, but we get drawing or painting, yeah, that's okay.
And George, it's instrumental music that you listen to, or any specific or anything, just to...
Basically, if I'm going to listen to instrumental music, believe it or not, if I'm drawing or painting, particularly if I'm using colours, if I'm going with colours, for example, painting, although I haven't been doing a lot of that, I've been doing a lot of drawings, because I'm sketching very quickly, sketching characters, and when we're going back to, say, Frankie's story, the tenement walls, I find that the charcoal pencil, black and white, paints a better picture of the tenement world than paint does. Do you understand? Because it's a black and white film, even though real life wasn't filmed in black and white.
And and you find the instrumental that gets the creative juices going.
Yeah, so if I'm going there, sort of the black and white imagery or the black and white style. Basically, if you're listening to what would be great music for that would be, if you've ever seen the film The Cinderella Man, James J. Braddock, right? The scores to that music is cinematic. It's very, very moving, and it can carry you along. If you're going to be doing paint or some sort of paint, go into some sort of Cuban, Brazilian, Latin music where it's upbeat, it's shaking, it's moving, it's colourful. Do you know that way?
And just on that, George, films, would you be big into films? That's a powerful film, Cinderella Man. George, are you into films? Would you watch films? Do you see yourself?
We're watching films, Netflix. Although, here's the thing. It's more series now, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're more into series now. And I watch Netflix. Now, I watch films. There was a thing, I haven't done it in about, I suppose, a month, but generally there was me and my son. We go once a week up to the cinema, watch a film. But here's the thing, if you actually ask me, so I've watched a lot of films, so if you actually ask me, what's the film that stands out in your mind? Well, I don't know. Modern day, can't really get it. Can't grasp that. Elvis, that comes to mind. Elvis.
Okay, yeah.
That was actually a classic film. Best film I've seen all year.
Great. No, it's a great recommendation. Anyone that hasn't seen it, yeah. And George,
best film I've seen all year.
In terms of then reading, do you find yourself reading, or is that something that plays big on you, or something that plays a part, or? No,
I don't read a lot, believe it or not, Ed. The thing what I would read would be, and my wife, she'd be reading a lot, I would read the Bible, right? And even with reading of the Bible, I've come into a place where what I'm doing with this now as well is that I need to get back into the reading. What I do is I actually listen to audio tapes. Or audio. So I'll play, if I'm drawing, for example, or something, I'll play the Gospel of John in an audio, in a dramatised version. So you hear the doors opening and chains moving and horses pulling up, you know, that type of dramatisation of the Gospel of John. So you're basically nearly hearing the film.
And George, faith is a big thing to you, and your relationship with Christ and that. And I've heard you talking about that before. Did you come to that? Was that always part of your life, George, or did you come to that late in life or young in life, or that whole thing of and it's a big part of your life, isn't it? It's fair to say that.
Oh, it's a big part of my life. It's an extremely huge part of my life. The point of it actually nearly go to the point and say it is my life, because I'm very interested where I'm going to spend eternity. And let's get it there. Like when we think about it, and rather than going into a whole scary doom and gloom story, but the reality is we're all born to die. Every one of us. And I've had a couple of basically scares, health scares and things like that. But however, in saying that, I'm still here. Here's the point: we're all born to die. So the reality is I want to know very clearly what happens when I die, because it's ultimately going to happen someday, and where do I go? And I do not want a whimsical answer to that. I want a guarantee. Like, I'm not going to go into an airport and somebody say to me, "Where are you going, George?" Well, Jenny, that's a great question, because I haven't got a clue. Right? And is your man flying the plane sober? Don't think so. But look, shall we get there in the end? That's an Irish mentality. The reality is, I don't want to find myself on the wrong side of eternity. So what I do is I search out the scriptures to find the solid answers that are rock solid, that cannot be disputed. Like the Bible says, the soul that sins dies, right? So every human being on this planet has sinned. So every human being dies. So the reality is that the scripture itself proves itself to be truth. Scripture will prove itself all the time. And when I get the rock solid answer to what I'm searching for, I have peace. Do you understand?
I do, George, and I tell you, we could carry on, and I'm just conscious of the time here. Just before we come to the end, George, what can we look out for next? If that's not a fair question, don't answer it now. I know writers
It is a fair question. What we have at the moment up there on YouTube, we want to look at it. It's Molly Gumball, the first 4 chapters. It's an audio book, Molly Gumball, and I have a couple of chapters up there. Don't have many. There's a few up there on YouTube also of the Promise Maker audio book. If you want to download the books, you can download Secret Life of Ashley Brown and the Promise Maker. And where I'm really, my primary purpose at the moment is to launch Man Makes the Best Coffee. Right? There is particular characters in that I'm very excited to release. And there's a couple of them there in a scene where they're in the home. They could make a great sketch out of, in the sense of a play. Not the whole book, but this one particular part where the grandmother, the mother, the father, people are all in the house together. That'd make a great sketch. So that's something down the line.
Brilliant, George, and we'll send people to that and go and look for that and support your writers as well out there and your artists. George, the one thing we always do at the end of the show is ask: is there a song? Why that song? And who would you like to dedicate it to?
Well, I suppose the best song to dedicate today would be "After the Pain" by Joseph Fitzgerald. You know, you get that on YouTube. After the Pain by Joseph Fitzgerald. My late brother's song. He wrote that particular song, and it's basically about a person who died, and it's about after the pain, and in remembrance of Joseph.
And dedicated to Joseph. So After the Pain by Joseph Fitzgerald, dedicated to Joseph Fitzgerald. George Fitzgerald, on behalf of Phoenix FM, as indeed all of us here at Making a Difference, our heartfelt thanks for talking to us today. We wish you every success and best wishes for the future. And thank you for making a difference.
Thank you.
Listening to Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.
CelticRepairs.ie